Hello and welcome to the Business Advocate Podcast. My name is Russell Carrier. I am your host. I'm the owner of First Choice of Business Brokers of East Tennessee in Nashville. And today we have a very special guest. His name is Jimi Gibson. And what we are going to be covering today is back on the topic of marketing. And Jimi works for the Thrive Agency and has many years of experience in marketing. And he is bringing something to this podcast that I never heard of before. It is the 5-finger method. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm going to let Jimi take over. So, Jimi, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Russell. Looking forward to our chat.
Absolutely. So give everybody just a little bit of a background on your experience and why they should be listening to you today.
Yeah, well, we'll take a kind of an interesting origin story. I actually started out very much interested in magic. I got a magic kit when I was a kid, and I don't know, just, you get something and it sticks with you. And I started actually performing in middle school, doing little birthday parties for my friends, and their parents would pay me to entertain my friends, which was kind of cool. And then in high school, I had an encounter with a gentleman who worked at an advertising agency, and he said that a very large international company was looking for a performer to help promote their business, and would I be interested? And so that relationship lasted another 16 years. And as I got to hang out around the ad agency and understand why did they want somebody to talk about magic, I think it's a cool topic. Everybody talks about, yeah, just wave your magic wand, make this problem disappear. And so it's kind of a metaphor that you hear all the time, but I got sort of the inside view of it. And when I was deciding what I wanted to study in college, it was just sort of a natural fit. The whole world of advertising and marketing just layered right on top of how to create a message, connect with an audience. I would say there's a lot of parallels between how to structure a magic trick and how to structure communication or a brand message to get visibility and interest in your brand. And so I started working at ad agencies. That's what they were called back then. I think there may be still a few vestiges of ad agencies. And the people that ran that agency were sort of that Mad Men era. And it was fun. It was interesting. And I actually started out as a graphic designer and was always asking the owners, like, what are they trying to solve? What are they doing? How are we supposed to communicate this? And I guess they got tired of me asking all these questions, and they said, you go, talk to the owner and find out. And so I guess through my inquisitiveness and figuring how to pull things together from my experience in magic, I ended up moving up to creative director and was working at a pretty large Omnicom agency, which is basically a holding company for ad agencies around the world. And the particular company I was working for had a branch in Richmond, Virginia, and the branch manager decided they wanted to move on to other things. And so we're all sitting there looking at each other going, what? And so I threw my top hat in the ring and said, could I run the agency? And so there were some conversations back and forth, and I was lucky enough to have that happen. And so I would put on my coat and tie and go meet with a client. And then I would come back and take off my coat and tie and, help the designers and the writers and all those folks create the campaigns. And I thought it was a unique experience in my career because I got to see both sides. And it's not just about pretty pictures. A company is hiring you to make things happen, right? They want to sell their product. They want to sell their service. They want to drive leads, those types of things. And so, throughout all of this, I was still performing magic. I was producing theme park shows. I had a corporate gig at the MGM in Las Vegas. I opened a theater in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. All the while, each one of these is feeding the other one. And so I've been at Thrive Agency 5 years now. They came on to actually start the strategy department. I believe if you don't have a good strategy, you're going to end up somewhere very expensive and probably somewhere you don't want to be, right? And so if I think back through all of that, and I know that was a pretty long answer, Russell, but I think it'll give context to what we're talking about today. You kind of have to think of your marketing as a performance. You have to think of your website as a stage. You have to think about your sales conversations as a pitch and not like, P.T. Barnum, but you have to grab attention. There's a lot of noise out there. And if you can be uniquely you and you can communicate in a way that lets people know, should I pick you over the competition? Then you're way ahead of other people, because most people are out there saying, we're running a special, use a coupon, this deal ends on Friday. And, that can only go so far.
Absolutely. So marketing is a huge topic, quite honestly. And I speak with a lot of business owners on a daily basis. And one of the major expenses in their P&L is marketing, typically. And I always ask, all right, what are you getting in return for this dollar that you're spending? And I always get that smile. And they're like, I have no idea. But I'm supposed to do it. And so I think there's a lot of confusion. Like you said, there's a lot of different methods to the madness when it comes to marketing. And when you and I spoke earlier and you brought up the 5-finger method, that really piqued my interest. So give everybody a little bit of insight as to what the overall 5-finger method is, and then we'll dive into them one at a time.
So you bring up an interesting point about measurement. I heard someone say one time in a similar conversation that you were having, I guess my marketing's working. I just don't know what part. And so that's the key, right? How do you figure out what's working? And so I think that's why I was attracted to the digital part of marketing, because it is highly measurable. And if you're used to traditional methods, I think there's a way to bridge traditional with digital so that you can know what's working and put more effort into things that are giving you that ROI. The 5-finger method really comes from me working with hundreds of different brands and trying to give a brand, and let's just talk about a business owner for the sake of this conversation, because they're typically the one trying to lead the team and move the needle in the right direction. How could I create some sort of memorable approach so people knew what stories to tell? And so there's a lot of topic about storytelling and marketing, right? Donald Miller came out with a book talking about story brand. That all comes from his training that he went through with Robert McKee, who was a screenwriter. All of Robert McKee's work came from Joseph Campbell, who basically deconstructed the way that we interact with stories. And so people don't remember data. They don't remember pie charts. They don't remember spreadsheets. They remember stories. And so if you can communicate in a story structure and a story approach, you're going to be memorable, and people will be able to describe your business to somebody else. And so again, that's pretty nebulous. It's like grasping air, okay, what does that mean, Jimmy? And so being a magician and doing sleight of hand, I thought, well, there's got to be something related to the hand. And so as I looked at my hand, there is basically a symbol or a metaphor for each one of the fingers. And from each one of those fingers, it's a starting point for very rich dimensional stories that you can tell about your brand. Doesn't matter which finger you pick. If you just use that as your content pillars, that you went out to social media, you created your customer journey, whatever communication you're doing, just look at your hand, pick a finger, and tell a story. And that's really how it all started.
Awesome. So let's get started.
All right.
Pick a finger.
We will start with the pinky finger. So some of you may be watching and you see me holding up my left hand. Some of you may be listening. So I am holding up my left hand. And so the pinky is kind of that pinky promise that you made on the playground as a kid, right? So you interlocked pinkies. You said, I pinky promise this. and you didn't break that promise, or your name would not be well received on the playground, right? So you kept that promise. And so I always ask a business owner, what promise are you making to your customer? What promise are you making to your team? What promise are you making to your vendors? Um, when you look at a promise, there is a way that you go about doing business. Do you have the best customer service? Why do you believe that's the right way to do that function of your business? Operationally, if you create a product, why did you choose the materials? Are you promising that these are the best materials? What can you stand by? Are you offering a guarantee? What does that guarantee entail? Is there risk reversal involved in your product or service? So I think if you just think about that, I just named off 5 or 6 different things. That's a rich way to get into a conversation, whether it be a blog post, a social media post, a sales conversation, the way you answer the phone, how you respond to customer questions, all of that. Is that good on the pinky?
Yeah, that's great. And I could actually attribute that to company
Oh,
culture as
absolutely.
well, right? That's the pinky promise. You create this culture, and we've actually had quite a few podcasts on culture. And once you decide what your culture is, that is the pinky promise, right? This is the way we're going to be running. So,
Yeah.
yeah, makes
Yeah.
perfect
And,
sense.
it is an agreement with your folks on your team. You're agreeing to provide them a nice work environment that challenges them and pays them appropriately. And they're agreeing that they're going to come to that role and do their best and bring their best. And so when that pinky promise doesn't hold out, then conversations need to happen, or people need to move on from that relationship. So that's awesome. Great point, Russell.
Yeah, love that. Pinky
So the
promise.
next one is the ring finger. And, in the United States and many parts of the world, that's where you wear your wedding band. There's actually a legend that there's a vein that runs from that finger all the way to the heart. They call it the venus amoris, later disproven, but it's a nice legend to remember. And you may think that's a promise, but it's actually passion. What was the passion that you brought to that business? What is the passion that your team brings to the business? How did that relationship start? Are you in it for the long haul? There is a level of commitment there, but there's also a courting relationship that happens with the prospect that you're courting. You're not going to go ask them to marry you on the first sales call, right? What is in your lead flow? What does your sales funnel look like so that you respect that courtship and don't overstep your bounds and go straight for the close and repel someone or have them think, "Oh, this is kind of creepy." I think we see that a lot on social media, especially on LinkedIn. When people are reaching out, they just go straight for the marriage proposal. And so, there's a lot of texture around the ring finger and a lot of emotion around the ring finger. And so I would say, think about that. And I've just given you another 5, 6, 7 stories that can be told about your brand related to that.
That's awesome. And I'm actually loving this. But well, you're
Yeah.
nailing everything, all the key components. And passion is extremely important in business. And I like what you said. Don't go for the marriage proposal on the first
Yeah.
date.
We've all
And I
been in
see
those
a lot of
conversations.
businesses that try to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it ends up, that date ends pretty quickly.
Yes.
So it makes perfect
And
sense. I
then
love it.
what's in your mind? Are you going for the quick sale? You just want to have coffee with this person? Or are you looking for a long-term relationship? And what are you willing to invest in that long-term relationship? My wife and I just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. And I think back over those 20 years, and there's been compromises, there's been good times, there's been bad times. Look at your client list. How long do people stick around? What is the average tenure of your clients? What is the average tenure of the people that work for you? My wife works for a company and they celebrated their 50th anniversary. And I attended. I know a lot of those people. The average tenure of the people in that company is 13 years. That is insane.
Wow. That was
So they're
remarkable.
doing something exceptional, right?
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Passion's key.
So
It's very important.
do we dare move on to the next finger, Russell?
Carefully.
All right, for those of you not watching, I am holding up all my fingers. I'm not just holding up the middle finger. So the middle finger is not a vulgar gesture. It's actually a gesture of defiance. And that defiance is directed at somebody, a company, an ideology, and really that's the villain. And so if you look at story structure, you can pick out any movie, any novel, and there's a villain, right? Otherwise, the hero doesn't have somebody to, have a fight with, have friction with. And so think about that. Who is the villain? If you truly believe your product or service can save your customer from that villain, you have to call that villain out. Now, obviously, it's a little weird if you name names or name companies, but I think, people can understand what you mean. If you have a personal training business, perhaps the villain is a fad diet, right? If you do amazing renovations of homes, perhaps your villain is a DIY person who thinks they can fix it themselves, right? Because they just don't have the training. Pick the villain. Who is that villain? Why do they need saving? It's up to you as the company to explain why they'll make a bad choice. And again, that is a rich conversation to have about your company. You mentioned culture. Why should you stick around? The grass isn't always greener on the other side. Let me give you a glimpse into what other company cultures can be like. Our particular company, typically in the digital marketing space, once people reach about 3 years of experience, they can get a higher salary. And so they are tempted to go to another company. I cannot tell you how many boomerang employees we have because they get somewhere else. Yes, they're making a higher salary, but guess what?
They're
They're
miserable.
miserable. They're working 24 hours a day. They're being called on their day off. We actually discourage overtime. We don't want you working overtime. It's not a badge of honor to work overtime. So to us, the villain is poor culture. From a digital marketing perspective, our villain is fluffy metrics that don't return ROI. So we want to be very clear that here are the things that are going to impact your revenue. Here are the things that aren't. And we don't mind calling out the gurus who say to do otherwise. And so again, I'm just giving you a couple of examples off the top of my head, but I'll bet the listeners out there, their heads are spinning going, yeah, who is my villain? And if you don't name your villain, then who is your team championing to conquer, right? It gives a single point of focus. You should be talking about your villain in sales conversations. You should be looking at your reviews, and your customers should be naming their villain that they avoided because they worked with you or they bought your product. So I love this one. This one, I think, is something that people shy away from.
Well, I can see this actually. I mean, we're saying villain and this type of thing, and it has a kind of a negative aspect to it. But if you're in sales and you understand who or what that villain is, you can actually turn that around and show value of what your service or product or whatever you're doing as a business can help that company. And people, I'm seeing it less and less. They don't sell on value anymore. Everything is dictated on price, which is, I hate it brutally. I don't like it. I believe in value. If you do have value, you need to showcase it. And if you find what the villain is, you can do that very easily. I love it. That's perfect.
And value also goes back to the pinky promise. You're going to promise that you're going to produce a quality product. It may cost a little more, but it's going to last you longer. If it's a service, you're going to do a better job, all those types of things. So.
Awesome.
All right. Moving on. The pointy finger. The pointy finger has lots of possibilities. I'm holding up my hand again. I am going to use my pointy finger, so that's the only finger up for those of you who are listening. I think we all remember the Uncle Sam posters that we want you. That finger is kind of a rude gesture, but it's pointing at somebody. It's not pointing at a group of people. So you have to know who is your ideal client. Who are you pointing at? What direction are you going in to reach your ideal customer? I have this belief that, especially on a website or in some sort of sales conversation, you should be talking to one person. You should have one big idea. You should be solving one problem, and you should have one call to action. And that is a very focused, laser focused ability to know exactly what you're about and who you're talking to. And once you're able to point at that person, then you turn your hand upside down and you start beckoning them in. And you go, come see what we have. And so that's an invitation for someone to explore what you're all about. It also relates back to the ring finger, right? You're inviting them on that date. You're going to explore whether this relationship is going to move forward or not, right? The other thing that the pointy finger does, it signifies number one. Do you want to be number one in your field? Do you have something that is your superpower? It also signifies going up. How are you going to reach your goals? How are you going to keep your team inspired? All of those types of things. So again, the number one is multifaceted. I probably rattled off 10 or 12 different options for the use of number one, but the whole purpose of the 5-finger approach is just a memory trick. It's for you to be able to have something that you carry around with you every day. When you're stuck, you don't know what story to tell. You've got a year's worth of conversations out of your one hand, and we haven't even gotten to the thumb yet.
I can't wait for the thumb. Well, I like how everything is tying back to the other fingers, and everything is evolving on how you started in storytelling. And you can branch off, like you've been saying. You've given 5 to 10 different topics that you could use for each finger so far. If you built your marketing campaign just from your method of the 5 fingers, I mean, you have a whole arsenal of tools that you can go out and talk to people about.
Yes. We try to make it simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to involve 20-step funnels with autoresponders, right? Just hold up your hand and look at it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
All right. What's the thumb?
So again, for the listeners and not the viewers, I do have my thumb up, and that's a universal symbol for, yep, everything's going great. This is the way to do it. Thumbs up. If you turn your thumb upside down, that's things aren't going too well. And so, or don't do that. And so we've all seen the memes that are do this, not that. And so that also can be a conversation that you have with your prospects and your customers. From what I've heard from you, you should be doing this and not that. This is what our product does. This is what our product doesn't do. And here's why. And so it's this contrast of the right way, the wrong way, do this, don't do that. Now, internally, the thumbs up is complimenting your team. Great job on that. Awesome. Compliment them in public. Put it on social media. If it's a thumbs down, how are we going to turn this around to a thumbs up? How are we going to make this a better story next quarter? You talked about, I don't know where my marketing dollars are going. Well, you can have a real simple, binary KPI for each one of your key metrics, right? It gets a thumbs up or it gets a thumbs down. And then you decide what the threshold of that KPI that deserves a thumbs up, or it moves over into a thumbs down. There's no half wiggly thumbs. Like, that's an easy way to set up a dashboard for your reporting. I'll take this even further. A thumb is a thumbprint. What thumbprint and what legacy are you leaving by having this business? What thumbprint are you leaving on the people that work with you and for you? What thumbprint are you leaving with your vendors just because they had the opportunity to interact with you? What thumbprint are you leaving on your customers? How did you change a problem? How did you get them to a better place? You know, all of those things. I have 3 sets of twin nieces and nephews, kind of crazy. They can open each other's phone with their face ID, but they can't open each other's phone with their thumbprint. It's unique to you. And so, I don't know, I've probably given more examples on the thumb than any of the other fingers. Saved it for last for a reason, because what is uniquely you? You should not apologize for the interests, the passions, going back to the ring finger. What charities are you involved in or should be involved in? What community efforts can you do that leaves a lasting thumbprint on the community around you, whether you're a local, regional, national, or international business? How are you changing the world? You know, your thumb has the power to change the world. So what are you waiting for? Go out there and do it.
That's awesome. I like the thumbs up, thumbs down analogy. And I like how keep it simple, keep the matrix
Yeah.
simple, the KPI simple. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Is it working or is it not? This is one thing I speak with owners when I ask them that question and that dollar amount on the P&L. What is your return? And I get that smile. I don't know. Then I always say, go through it, figure out what's working, add a little more money to it, figure out what isn't, take that budget away from it, and apply it to something else that will contribute to more sales, more revenue, and better for the business. That's a great thumbs up, thumbs down. Keep it simple.
Better or worse?
Right. Working or
Working
not.
or not. Yeah, I know. I know. It's crazy how sometimes the simple way is the best way, isn't it, Russell?
It is. Well, it's the old analogy. Keep it simple,
Yep.
stupid. Right? And I think we all tend to go and make things very complicated.
I know. Why do we do that? We love pain.
I don't know. So we covered the whole 5
We did.
fingers. Is there anything left? Is there a summary?
Well, often people say, what finger do you start with? So I want everybody to hold up your hand. If you're driving while listening to this, please don't do this. Wait until you pull over somewhere. And I just want everybody out in the audience to hold up your left hand and use your right hand to put your right pointy finger on either your left pinky or your left thumb. I'll give you the choice. You can start with either one. Russell, you can follow along too. All right. So I'm going to start on my pinky. If you're on your thumb, you know, that's fine too. We're going to make 5 moves because there's 5 fingers, and you don't count until you move to the next finger. So it doesn't count on your thumb or your pinky. As you move, count and make 5 moves, and you can go back and forth, but you can't skip a finger. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and stop on the 5th one. Okay. So wherever you stopped, keep your finger on that one. And I know you didn't land back on your pinky or thumb, so close those in. So you should just be holding up 3 fingers now. All right, we're going to do this again. Wherever you are, I want you to make 5 more moves. Remember, don't skip a finger and don't start counting until you make your first move. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, great. Keep your finger there. I know you're not on your ring finger, so fold that one in. Make 1 more move. You should be on your pointy finger. Did that work for everybody? Let's hear a round of applause. It looks like it worked for Russell. Why is that the finger you should start with? Because if you don't know who you're talking to, you're not going to know what to say to anybody.
Perfect. And you got a little magic in there.
Absolutely. Couldn't leave without any magic.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Jimmy, I greatly appreciate you going through this. I found it fascinating. I'm sure the listeners are going to as well. It's Nice and
It
simple.
is refreshing.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I
Awesome.
appreciate having the opportunity to walk people through it, and hopefully it can provide some folks some clarity and help them wrangle all of this noise out there and just realize it doesn't have to be that hard.
100% agree. Jimmy, if people have questions or if they want to get a hold of you to ask you about this five finger method, how can they
Yeah.
do that?
I hang out on LinkedIn a lot. I post a video every day, Monday through Friday. Just hit me up with a DM, follow me. Um, Tell me you saw or listened to the show and you just want to chat. I'm a tea drinker, but you can bring your cup of coffee or water or whatever you've got, and we'll just have a little chat. So happy to do that. And then if you want to learn more about Thrive Agency, it's just thriveagency.com. And we've got a bunch of articles and information there. I do a blog every month with about a 20-minute video teaching some principle of marketing, which I think will be helpful to folks. So yeah, any of those channels will work.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time. I know you're busy. So, everybody listening, thank you for listening. We greatly appreciate it. If you haven't done so, please subscribe, whatever you're listening on or watching. Please like the videos. One thing that we're not getting a lot of is comments. I would love to see your comments. I would like to know, what are you getting anything out of these podcasts and these videos? If not, what would bring value to you? That's the whole purpose of the Business Advocate podcast. We're trying to bring value to business owners. So my name is Russell Carrier. I've been your host. We greatly appreciate you listening to the Business Advocate podcast. You have yourself a great day.